Good morning and welcome virtually to the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. My name is Christopher Sands and I direct the Canada Institute at the Wilson Center. And I'm very pleased to be co-hosting this event with my good friend Scotty Greenwood, who is the Executive Director of the Canadian American Business Council. I think we're both excited because of the very nature of this event, not just a conversation illuminating as they always are at the Wilson Center, but action, a chance to really see the state of Maryland and the province of Ontario work together. To set us up, the CABC has pulled together a framing video. So very slick. Let me turn it over to you, Scotty, to get that started.
Well, you just told me, Chris, that it's not a thing unless you had a video. We are, after all, meeting virtually, so let's roll the video.
Well, that was a really great way to get us started. Now it is my pleasure to hand over to the 62nd Governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, and the 26th Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, for opening remarks. Governor Hogan?
Well, good morning, and thank you very much. I'm so pleased to be able to join with all of you today to reaffirm the special relationship enjoyed by Maryland and Ontario with the signing of a strategic investment and procurement agreement, and to team up once again with my friend Premier Doug Ford. I have always believed in the importance and value of looking outside our borders to build strong, productive, and mutually beneficial international partnerships. And Canada truly is one of Maryland's most important partners. To strengthen this relationship, my administration opened our state's very first trade and investment office in Canada in the fall of 2015. 2 years later, I was joined by Governor McAuliffe of Virginia and Mayor Bowser of Washington, D.C. for a joint tourism and economic development mission to Ontario. And last December, I was proud to welcome my friend Premier Ford to Annapolis here in this historic State House. We had the first ever diplomatic meeting here to involve an authentic Canadian League football. I met again with Premier Ford and the Ontario delegation during the National Governors Association winter meeting, when we were joined by all of Canada's premiers as we worked together across political parties and national borders to push for the ratification of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. That meeting took place just before America's governors were first briefed by Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Robert Redfield on the looming threat of COVID-19. After that meeting, our focus and the focus of the world shifted to fighting the twin crises of a deadly global pandemic and the resulting economic crisis. With today's agreement, I'm confident that a renewed and expanded partnership between Maryland and Ontario will be mutually beneficial to both our region's economic recoveries. More than 205,000 jobs in Maryland depend on Canada-US trade and investment. And more than 130 Canadian-owned companies operate here in the state of Maryland. Over $1.8 billion in goods were traded between Ontario and Maryland just last year. Today's agreement will strengthen an already vibrant relationship between Maryland and Ontario by fostering economic growth and workforce development, enhancing cooperation, attracting investment, and reducing trade barriers. It will promote cooperation in advanced manufacturing and agriculture and help us explore innovative models for financing transportation projects, which was a pillar of my infrastructure initiative that I led this past year as chairman of the National Governors Association. As a matter of fact, we had planned to hold an NGA Infrastructure Summit in Canada for April of 2020, which we were deeply disappointed to have to cancel. But through this agreement, we will also be able to share best practices to mitigate the impacts of unforeseeable events, including natural disasters and public health crises. We look forward to continuing to promote this incredible partnership with the people of Ontario for many years to come. And I want to congratulate and express my appreciation to everyone who has worked so hard to make this agreement possible. And thank you once again for inviting me to join with you here today.
Thank you, Governor Hogan. And now we turn to Premier Ford.
Well, thank you so much, Governor Hogan. And I'll tell you, folks, I don't know who was in the room that day, but for any reason, and I don't believe this is going to happen for another 50 years, but if you're never governor, you could be a great quarterback. Because I've given those, I'll tell you, I have given those footballs out to so many leaders, so many ambassadors and governors, and I'll never forget the arm you had. You tossed that thing like a college football player. So there you go. You have a great second career.
But thank you. Anyways, I still had that football. I was proud to get it.
I'll tell you, it's a little bigger than the NFL, but man, did you toss it? I'll be ready next time. But I'm glad to be joined today with our Minister Vic Fedeli. I always call him Governor, our best trade person. He's in charge of economic development and trade, and he's a true champion. And so is Ian Todd, Ontario's representative to Washington, D.C. And Secretary Schultz, it's always great to see you once again, and we look forward to having you to Toronto as soon as possible when we get through this pandemic. Thanks to the Wilson Center and the CABC for hosting us, and my friend Scotty Greenwood for her continued support. Scotty, you're always doing a great job bringing both countries together. We appreciate it. Today's marks an incredible milestone in our economic partnership as we sign this subnational agreement between two great regions, Ontario and Maryland. And this is a strategic investment partnership agreement, is the first of its kind for our province. So this is, we're blazing a new trail here. This agreement will make it easier to do business on both sides of our shared border, encouraging trade, attracting investment, and creating more opportunities for Ontario and Maryland businesses. Ontario is the #1 customer to 19 states, including Maryland. Last year, two-way trade between Ontario and Maryland was an impressive $2.3 billion. That's Canadian, or 1.8 billion US, and that figure will only continue to grow. We're powerhouses, both of us, absolute powerhouses when it comes to advanced manufacturing, high tech, our auto sectors, and now PPE. As we look to the future, as we look to the life after COVID-19, this agreement will help accelerate the mutual recovery of our two jurisdictions. We have sold the foundation on which we build strong, long-standing trade ties that will help businesses grow and thrive and create more jobs. This agreement will also help secure our PPE supply chains, not only in the short term, but well into the future. We no longer have to rely on any other jurisdiction for our PPE. We can make it all here, right here in North America. Maryland can go to their neighbor Ontario for PPE and vice versa. Governor Hogan and I also share a passion for infrastructure. We both know how important it is to improving our daily lives and how critical it is for our overall recovery. We want to get the shovels in the ground sooner than later to build roads, bridges, transit, and highways, so we can create jobs and get local the economies going once again in our communities right across Maryland and across Ontario. We are spending in Ontario $144 billion That's $144 billion over the next 10 years in infrastructure. And now with this agreement, there's even more opportunity for businesses in our two jurisdictions to bid on and contribute to these critical projects. In a world with so much uncertainty, you gotta stick with your friends. And Governor Hogan has been such a great friend to Ontario. The key to our success will be working together to support our businesses, to increase trade, and to drive prosperity for both our economies. I'm looking forward to seeing the partnership flourish. Governor, it was about a year ago since we met in your beautiful state, and it's absolutely stunning, a beautiful state of Maryland. And I handed you that football, as we talked about earlier, and the playing field has been tough this year for all of us. But even in the tough challenges of COVID-19, our teams managed to get the ball across the finish line. So thank you, Governor Hogan, for your leadership in helping us get this agreement to the finish line. This mutually beneficial agreement will be great for people of Ontario and Maryland as we both work on getting the economy going for our people. I want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, a happy and very safe New Year, and we'll knock it out of the park in 2021. God bless the people of Maryland and God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you very much.
All right, and now we have the moment we've been waiting for, the signing of the Ontario-Maryland agreement. The agreement is being signed by Governor Larry Hogan, Premier Doug Ford, Secretary Kelly Schultz, and Minister Vic Fideli. Can you all hold up the agreement? See if we can get a good shot of that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. We'd have a round of applause if we were allowed to do that on Zoom, but I'm afraid it's impossible. We can virtually clap for one another. That was really wonderful. History in the making. And now I understand that Governor Hogan and Premier Ford will depart and we'll begin a roundtable discussion. But thank you, Governor, and thank you, Premier, for being part of this event, for the agreement and the leadership that you've brought, and for bringing it to the Wilson Center and CABC so we could share it with the wider public.
And congratulations.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to everybody. Thanks for all your hard work.
Congratulations. Thank you.
And now we turn to two participants in today's signing, Secretary Kelly Schultz of the Secretary of Commerce for Maryland, and Minister Vic Fideli, who is the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade for the province of Ontario. Just to give you a sense that of the leaders we're going to be hearing from next, Kelly Schultz, prior to becoming Secretary of Commerce for the state of Maryland, was Secretary of Labor and served as a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. This is not always the case with cabinet members in the United States. They're not always legislators, unlike in Canada where they have to be. But Kelly Schultz is someone who's been on all sides of this and understands her state so well. Minister Vic Fideli is now Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, but previously served as Minister of Finance, leader of the Progressive Conservative Party in Ontario, and is currently a member of provincial parliament for Nipissing. So let me turn to you, Kelly Schultz, first for some remarks, and then to Mr. Fideli.
Hi, well, good morning again to everyone. What a great day to be here together, and I'm so pleased that both Governor Hogan and Premier Ford were able to join us for this and really spark some enthusiasm from the business community. And just want to thank again everybody. But this has been fantastic. Minister Fideli, I'm very pleased that we could have this time for the signing together as well. It would have been better if we would have been in Ontario this past spring, but we will come back, I promise, in the near future once the pandemic is lifted. With all of the challenges that our countries in the world have been facing this year, it's wonderful to have just another piece of really good news that we can celebrate. I think we all seek that out as much as we possibly can. We did see the first steps of the coronavirus vaccine rollout this past week here in the States and overseas. So while we may still have difficult days ahead of us, we can now see the end of the pandemic more clearly, which makes it all the more important that we continue with this critical work of economic development and building partnerships like this one. This agreement will help to expand trade and investment opportunities in both Maryland and Ontario. Our two states already have very strong ties, as you heard from leadership, and this will make them even stronger. A couple of examples. OpenText, which is based in Ontario, is Canada's largest software company and employs hundreds of Marylanders in Gaithersburg, right down the street from me. Canada as a whole was Maryland's second largest export partner and sixth largest import partner in 2019. Canadian companies operating in Maryland employ over 14,000 people and contribute over $830 million in salaries to our economy each year. Maryland has welcomed 154,000 Canadian visitors this past year in 2019. And while that number will obviously be a little bit different in 2020, we certainly are looking forward to welcoming the people of Canada to Maryland again to explore our great state. So it's a great day for both of our states and both of our countries. And now I look forward to taking some questions after Minister Fedeli has his remarks as well. So thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Secretary Schultz. Thank you, Scotty. Thank you, Christopher. And thank you all for being here and joining us for this very, very exciting event. And as Secretary Schultz said, it would be nice meeting you all in person. It's a pleasure to be gathered here virtually to celebrate the signing of Ontario and Maryland's new investment and procurement agreement. Even through our screens, it's an honor to be surrounded by so many people who care deeply about the stability and prosperity of our businesses and our economies on both sides of the border. As Ontario's Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, continuing to position Ontario as open for business, open for jobs is my #1 priority. Helping businesses remain competitive is at the center of everything we do. And increasing trade and investment around the world is necessary for Ontario to achieve this. During this time of economic uncertainty due to the impacts of COVID-19, there's no reason why we can't continue to unlock opportunities that we can all benefit from and get ready for the better times ahead. I commend Secretary Schultz and her team for their close collaboration over these past months and their commitment to strengthening our partnership. Thankfully, Ontario and the United States, including key states like Maryland, already have a strong partnership, one that has led to economic growth, productivity, and good paying jobs on both sides of the border. In 2019, Ontario was the top export destination for 19 US states, and we ranked second for 9 more. Two-way trade between Ontario and the US amounted to $390 billion, as Premier Ford said, in Canadian dollars. And if Ontario were a country, we would be the US's 3rd largest trading partner. So even through this difficult time, the strength of the Ontario-US trading relationship has prevailed. We made a concerted effort to ensure commercial activity, the trade of goods, and other important activities related to our highly integrated supply chains was not impacted by border restrictions. Goods have continued to flow back and forth, keeping food on our tables and ensuring store shelves remained stocked. So this is vitally important to the resiliency of both our nations. And during these times of crisis, open trade will help ensure both of our economies and businesses recover faster. I call it NAFTA 2.0, the USMCA. It further solidified Ontario's relationship with the US, our largest trading partner. But we know we cannot take these important relationships for granted. We need to go further to create the conditions for increased investments and securing more certainty for businesses and workers. And that's why Ontario is pursuing strategic investment and procurement agreements. We're going to call them SIPAs. That's governmentese, but we're pursuing these SIPAs with US states to make it easier for businesses in our province and in the US to do business with one another. We're so pleased to announce the first of what we hope will be several SIPAs with partner US states. This new agreement between Ontario and Maryland is a platform on which to build on the strong economic relationship that we have developed over decades of engagement across the border. In 2019, Ontario and Maryland business, as you heard the Premier say, traded in Canadian dollars at 2.3 billion. That's $1.8 billion worth of goods with one another. And now we can continue to unlock tremendous economic potential. So the agreement includes activities to increase investment, job creation, and two-way trade in both jurisdictions. Areas of focus, as you heard, will be advanced manufacturing, infrastructure, and the agri-food sectors. We'll collaborate to help mitigate the impacts of unforeseen events, such as natural disasters or public health emergencies, which include sharing best practices to support ongoing responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. We're going to create a first of its kind procurement cooperation council, and that'll improve transparency, engagement, and dialogue on government purchasing for businesses based in Ontario and in Maryland. And most importantly, we're going to track the agreement's effectiveness against KPIs, key performance metrics, that such as total two-way trade, we'll track that, total foreign direct investment, total number of Ontario-Maryland FDI projects. This is an exciting outcome. So the Ontario-Maryland agreement means that we can continue to create opportunities for businesses in a wide range of sectors, deliver real improvements in market access, job creation, and investment. Our government is very proud to collaborate on these partnerships. We will continue to work together to remove trade barriers, promote investment, strengthen economic ties. Important agreements such as this and our mutual North American Rebound initiative, led by Scotty, the CABC, thank you. They're key to ensuring our mutual economic recovery so we can emerge from the pandemic stronger than ever. Ontario's commitment is to build bridges, not barriers, and that commitment remains. So today marks a really important step, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak at length. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Minister Fedeli, and thank you, Secretary Schultz. We'll now enter a roundtable. We invite your questions. You can send your questions in to canada@wilsoncenter.org. It's all one word. And I will add, for Canadians who are watching, we spell center the American way. So it's ER, not RE, in case you have trouble with that. And we'll get to as many questions as we can in the time that we have remaining. I'm going to turn to my co-host, Scotty Greenwood, to lead off the questioning. Scotty.
Thank you so much, Chris Sands, and thank you, Secretary and Minister. Thank you, Minister Fedeli, for the shout out to the North American Rebound campaign. This is a tangible example of how we're going to rebound together, and I invite everyone to check out North American Rebound and join in this effort to propel the support right across Canada and the United States for what we're doing. But congratulations to the governments for really facilitating this economic recovery. Both of you actually answered some of the questions I had. Just a small piece of history that some people may not know. When Maryland joined the United States of America officially, the founders said, well, there's one other jurisdiction, a couple hundred years ago, there's one other jurisdiction that we'll let in without a big vote. And the other jurisdiction that we would let in to join as another state after Maryland would be Canada. And Canada said, no, thanks. Actually, that's a historic fact. So here we now have these agreements that we have to have since we're two different countries. I'd like to ask the Secretary how this agreement is different from some others, and that Maryland has. How is it unique? And I'd also like to ask you a question about workforce development, because it's mentioned in the agreement, but also in preparing for this, Secretary, I noticed, your previous job appointment at the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation was a perfect preparation, and you have an incredible record of apprenticeships, which is something that we know is awfully important to this economic recovery. So I wonder if you could address workforce development and how this agreement is unique.
Absolutely. Well, you're touching on my very favorite topic, which is apprenticeships and workforce development, because I think it hits both economic development and workforce development, obviously. But just as far as some, historical differences between this agreement as compared to some of the last other agreements that we've had, the logistics of this is that this is our very first subnational agreement, right? So this is something that we, with the governor's support, really wanted to be able to make sure that it was a little bit different than our other MOUs that we may have had with other states or global entities. And there's a couple of other major differences in that this is the first agreement that, you're right, we do focus on 3 agencies within the state of Maryland. So we're bringing together the Department of Commerce, which I currently lead, the Department of Labor, which I was leading for 4 years before this, and then also our Department of Transportation. And I think that the collaboration, we see it as all of us being business entities in the governor's commerce sub-cabinet that's led by our department, because you can't have economic development, as we know, without the cooperation and collaboration of several different agencies. Also, a little bit of a difference is that this is our first agreement that's focusing on advanced manufacturing and agri-foods and agriculture. And what a great partnership for our 2 states in order to be able, to focus on some of what we have, not only as our current strengths, but also on those strategic ways and those investments that we think that we can capitalize on the assets that we have right now, and just making them bigger and broader. And then I would say international economic development, looking at the workforce, is of course something that is very near and dear to my heart. And when I talk to our business community now as the Secretary of Commerce, I say we can't have economic development without workforce development. And when I was at the Department of Labor, I said, hey, you people at Commerce, you can't have economic development without us here, right? So they do go hand in hand, and we need to be able to capitalize on that. And I think we also need to capitalize on the diversity of the resources and the assets that we have. And that's where I think apprenticeships are assisting with that. Maryland is a very diverse, demographically diverse population, and geographically diverse. And bringing either entry-level positions into some of these industries that we're focusing on here today through the apprenticeship process is a very efficient and effective way in order to be able to do that. But that takes a partnership between the business community and academia, and those individuals that are out there looking with the understanding and the educational awareness of how that type of a system can work so well. And I spent 4 years talking about the difference between a traditional apprenticeship, which may be in the trade programs, which most people are very comfortable and supportive, and they understand that concept. But going into some of those non-traditional types of occupations, we started our first cybersecurity apprenticeship with a partnership with the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and the NSA, the National Security Administration, because they needed those types of employees very fast, and we needed to build those relationships so that we have a learning and earning environment that is mutually beneficial to the business community and, of course, to the individual that's going into that apprenticeship opportunity. And I could, if you allow, to talk for hours and hours on it, but I think being able to share these best practices and what we have for non-traditional types of apprenticeship opportunities, Maryland has led the charge in that across the United States, and happy to share what we know in the future to really incorporate every single industry, every single type of job profession that can allow for this type of learning environment to be able to quickly satisfy the needs of these growing businesses. So thank you for asking me that question. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Secretary. I'm looking at the minister. It looks like you've got something to say there, and then I'll turn it back to Chris.
I do. Thank you. I agree absolutely with Secretary Schultz. When you think about the kind of supports that are in this agreement, that we're going to be able to share best practices, and as the Secretary said, we're going to be able to look at sharing how we create and train our workforces across all sectors. Something unique that we did here was we put $181 million into training people in those areas that were hit most hard from COVID-19. So think about the tourism and recreation sectors. They were, as the minister would say, first to be hit, hardest hit, absolutely, and are going to be the longest to recover. And so we have put this $181 million into that, so that it is to be used for training of those people, especially in the hospitality sector, for the jobs that are available in the future, and the future being as soon as we're out of COVID-19. A lot of these are, as the Secretary said, these are apprentice programs, they're in manufacturing. We've been doing everything we can here with great programs when the theaters were open to have our commercials play, to end the stigma of a skilled trade. And so these are the kind of discussions that we hope to be able to share our best practices and create a more competitive operating environment. So I wanted to add that flourish from Ontario's perspective.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I think this is setting the scene for us well. If we have people watching this in Maryland and Ontario, and they're interested in business, are there sectors that should, particularly benefit here, sit up and take notice? You mentioned tourism, but beyond that, how can we communicate about the potential upside, and who are we trying to reach with this messaging today? I'll turn to you, Minister, first, and then perhaps to Secretary Schultz.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christopher. This is really focused on areas of the advanced manufacturing, agri-food, agribusiness. We basically agreed to promote economic development of both jurisdictions. Again, you've heard the numbers, 2.3 billion. It's 1.5 billion exports into Maryland, about 850 million imports into Ontario. But a key component of it as well, from the business perspective, is this will give the ability to tap into these prospective procurement opportunities. It unlocks, Maryland is investing about $37 billion into infrastructure, and it unlocks that. It unlocks the tens of billions that Ontario is investing in infrastructure. And it allows us to have this an open dialogue about the future rules and regulations for public procurement. We could have this ongoing conversation with, as I said earlier, key performance measurements, so that we can track all of this. An idea that could come from it, of course, would be things like regulatory harmonization. We're thinking trucking. Even from coast to coast in Canada, there are different regulatory rules in transportation that we're working on. The tire pressures are different in every province. The amount of bandages you need in a first aid kit are different. There's rules and regulations that are strangling our economy. And so we're looking at those, and these are the kinds of things that we can correct for with this SIPA with Maryland.
Secretary Schultz, what is Maryland looking for sector-wise? Who in Maryland should be looking at this as an opportunity?
I would agree with the minister. Actually, when we look at our advanced manufacturing and our agribusiness type opportunities that we have out there, one thing that we have been very strong in is our port. We have the Port of Baltimore, that is one of the most active and vibrant ports in our nation along the East Coast. And the amount of goods, particularly cars, that come into the port, and I know that we have a very notable trade with Ontario, with the auto industry. And so with that, with the very profound, I guess, advancement of our port, and it continues to grow, logistics for these types of industries is also growing. So distribution centers, which we have every day, we're getting more. So it's the advanced manufacturing, it's the agri-food, but also what can we do in order to be able to advance that that distribution of those products between our states as well. And I think that's going to be an important part, something that we have focused on as far as the logistics industry here in the state as well. But I'll say, you know, advanced manufacturing, it's everything from, you know, those tangible products to what we are seeing right now, where we need our biohealth and our life science industries, you know, ramping up in manufacturing as well in order to be able to produce large quantities of these vaccines, testing equipment, treatments. And Maryland is home to, you know, some of the best and brightest in the nation and in the world as far as the number of facilities that we do have here, and want to be able to make sure that that is also a global presence and not just a state or a national presence as well. And I think everybody would agree that going into this next phase in the cure of this virus, it will take, and it already has taken, a global effort, and we want to be a part of that as well.
Thank you, Secretary Schultz. And I just want to remind our viewers that if you'd like to ask a question, email your question to us at Canada@wilsoncenter, WILSONCENTER.org. Now, I'd like to ask you a question. Since you mentioned this is a subnational agreement, how are the federal governments responding to this initiative? Are they supportive, or do you think they have some obstacles that they could remove from the cooperation between Ontario and Maryland still? Secretary Schultz, perhaps have you start with that?
Well, that's a difficult question for me to answer since we're going into a switch of administrations, right? So I would say that I guess what I understand about the relationships and the U.S. Mexico-Canadian agreement that we had signed earlier this year, I think it's very evident that our federal partners feel very strongly that we continue with these types of treaties, and to be able to have these trade opportunities, it's mutually beneficial for each of the three partners in that type of a program. But I think we get nothing but support. And we obviously have, I mentioned before, we have several types of MOUs and partnerships with other global entities. But this is the first, and we are supported through some federal dollars in order to be able to offer some export opportunities to our businesses here, and to learn how to have more importing opportunities. So what we get from the Economic Development Agency through the Department of Commerce at the federal level helps us to help these businesses that are going to be able to continue to have the relationships. So, and I don't see that going away. I just see it continuing to increase. And in my opinion, the more successful that we can become, and the more determined we can become to, as the minister had stated, being able to prove the data and the outcomes of these agreements, the more that we're going to be able to have the federal government look at these as something that may be much more suitable on a more local type of a relationship, and having those one-on-one collaborations.
Thank you. And after the last year and the election campaigns, it's so good to hear that states and the federal government are collaborating and not fighting. But what about Canada? Minister Fedeli, I know sometimes there is tension between Ottawa and the provinces. How supportive is Ottawa of this initiative?
Two things. I will start with how you ended with Secretary Schultz. It's been a remarkable, non-political tenure through this pandemic. It's quite frankly, everybody has left all politics at the door. We have a liberal government in a minority position federally under Prime Minister Trudeau. We have a conservative government with a majority here in Ontario under Premier Ford. All of that is out of the way. We just looked at, all right, what are the issues? What are the problems? What do we need for, whether it's students or seniors or families, but I'll speak here about business. What do we need? Who can best afford it? and who can best deliver it. And sometimes the feds will pay for it and we'll deliver it, but we just wanted to make sure there are no gaps. And I'll tell you, we have done deals right across Ontario with the federal government standing at our side. We just did the 3M manufacturing of N95 masks in a town of Brockville, city of Brockville here in Ontario. It's a $75 million facility in a trilateral partnership. So we're all getting along extremely well. I have to say, I mean zero politics involved in this pandemic. It's people who are at the top and the health and well-being of all the families. Now, specifically to this, when we think about USMCA, or as I always call it, NAFTA 2.0, we can't take these important agreements for granted, which is why we're being proactive with Governor Hogan and Secretary Schultz and doing this strategic investment procurement agreement. Now, the federal governments has been generally supportive to advance anything that helps advance an open and non-discriminatory procurement, I should say. They've been generally supportive of these, I'll call it a side deal. This is a sub-national deal. And so we have done this sub-national deal under provincial authority. And so all of the provisions line up with our Ontario's commitments under all of our international trading agreements. So the federal government and quite frankly, the business community, I'm going to give a shout out to the Ontario Chamber of Commerce and Rocco Rossi. They have been tremendously supportive in encouraging these strategic investment and procurement agreements.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have a question from one of our viewers, Kathy Warden, who's with Cisco Corporation. She asks, as Cisco is the largest cybersecurity company in the world and deeply engaged in their network of academies for training the IT workforce, she asks, could you comment, either the minister or the secretary, on the significant need for cyber security talent and the link that the secretary's efforts to make Maryland a global cyber hub and similar efforts in Ontario, how can this benefit the cybersecurity workforce, the local economy, and boost recovery post-pandemic? Secretary Schultz, we'll let you start.
Sure, I'll take that one first. And cybersecurity and information technology in general is one of our key strategic industries in the state of Maryland for obvious reasons, right? I mentioned before NSA and other government entities that are right in our backyard, our proximity to some of the best and brightest, and even the federal labs and the research agencies right now are right here in Maryland. The key is to, in my opinion, to be able to continue to develop those types of programs in our academic institutions. And that's from kindergarten through 12th grade, right? So our students at every age level should be starting to, or if they have not already, starting to incorporate those types of programs and curriculum into their daily routines. This is a topic, and having that STEM or STEAM type of approach throughout the course of a child's life is something that's going to be critical no matter what job you go to. So cybersecurity sometimes, and I come from a little bit of a cyber background and had started a small cybersecurity company several years ago before I joined the Hogan administration, but it's very broadly defined. So, and the type of an employee, the type of worker, the type of talent that you need in cybersecurity isn't just somebody that's sitting behind a computer all day, every day, writing code, for example, right? So there's so many different talents that are needed that a broad education in information technology and computer science in general. So I would offer that to academia moving forward. But as far as attracting the types of talent that we need, if we're not able to produce our entire workforce from locally grown individuals, is to be able to make sure that we as Maryland are seen, and I'm sure Ontario as well, as a cyber ecosystem where there is competition and there can be feeding off of those same individual types of companies You're going to have the large companies like Cisco, and Cisco, thank you so much for everything that you do in the state of Maryland. We really appreciate your partnerships that we have here. And being able to take those and looking at what that supply chain looks like, that is going to help to benefit. And in Cisco's case, how are they helping to benefit some of those startups as well? So advancing a very strong entrepreneurial R&D type of process for the community here is something that is at the department, one of our main priorities is to advance technology overall. And that's through a lot of marketing, a lot of just putting our stake in the ground, saying this is who we are and this is where everybody needs to be, and seeing how they flock to Maryland. So thank you, Cisco, for the question.
Excellent. Minister Fedeli.
In Ontario, just to put it in perspective for our US friends, we are about 40% of the population of Canada. And here in Ontario, we are the #2 IT cluster in all of North America, just behind Silicon Valley. And I think that's an important statistic. We have about 20,000 IT companies, about 375,000 IT employees. In our government right now, we're going through a major transformation. Somebody in the green room earlier talked about us bringing on our innovation czar, as I call him, Tim Hockey. We are doing a digital first for our government. So we want you to be able to have your, be able to renew your driver's license, in Ontario, the health card, your vehicle registration, anything that you normally line up. We want to take the top 10 things you line up for and make them digital. And of course, that is going to need a tremendous application of cybersecurity. We have your insurance card, little, I don't know what it's like in the States, but we have a pink slip that goes inside your wallet for your insurance. We want to have that digitized so you can show it when required. This is going to need a tremendous amount of cybersecurity attention. So thank you, Cisco, for your thoughts and for your huge presence in Ontario. And it is a major focus. So we train 50,000 STEM grads every year here in Ontario, and they're being scooped up by the IT companies. Even through COVID, they have continued to hire. I speak with them on a weekly basis, and this one is hiring another 50, another 100, another 200. It's been amazing through COVID that they continue to hire because, and specifically in the cybersecurity area as well.
We have a very specific question, interesting one too. Victor Moulton asks, in Baltimore, in Maryland, the blue crabs are popular and in fact delicious, but he says in Ontario, often what he can get are Dungeness crabs from the West Coast. Is there a potential for seafood trade to grow out of this agreement? Either of you could jump in on that one.
I think our watermen would love that opportunity. So maybe we should talk about something specific, get something shipped out.
That's a great question. I'm starting to salivate. I'm thinking about, I missed breakfast, so I'm starting to think about lunch now. And when you think about the 1.5 billion in goods that Ontario ships to Maryland, it's primarily auto and nickel. When you think about the products, the 850 almost million products from Maryland to Ontario, we know that it's a lot of printed materials and books, followed by medications. And I noted on the list somewhere down there, not too far down there, were sauces, condiments, and other goodies as well. So we are really open for business and open for trade. And so this is why this agreement is so important, to be able to have us sit at a table and be able to talk about these things. That's an opportunity not just for companies in Maryland, that's opportunities for sales from companies in Ontario as well. That's the beauty of this two-way relationship. This isn't all about, this isn't a one-sided deal in any way, shape, or form. What's good in trade for Maryland is good for Ontario and vice versa. So that's a very good, it tells me that we probably should have some kind of a product trade show, virtual trade show, Secretary Schultz.
That's a great idea, Minister Fedeli. And I'll just say, I think aquaculture in general is something that, we're very interested in moving forward. We have some exciting new projects and opportunities that are coming. Staggering for me to have found out that I believe it's over 80%, don't quote me on that, but it's over 80% of the fish that we eat in the United States is imported. And we eat a lot of fish here apparently, but we're not doing a lot of fishing. But I think it's very interesting. So having the opportunities and the plans for folks to create, larger types of farming for that aquaculture, I think is very interesting. And it fits into what we are looking at with this partnership between Ontario and Maryland in that aquaculture category, because being able to, supply that food chain to ourselves as opposed to always looking at that import across the ocean when we're just across the border, I think is something very important to continue to look at. And we have those similarities where we have an urban industrial center, but a large part of the state of Maryland is rural. It's agriculture, similar to Ontario in the demographics.
May I interject, Secretary
Sure.
Schultz? Let's pursue this virtual product trade show idea a little bit. We have, when we think about the Med Tech show, it was virtual this year. Farnborough Air Show was all virtual this year. And just in the last 2 weeks, we led our first ever minister-led virtual mission to India. We were supposed to be in India the last 2 weeks. We were there at this time last year, did great trade deals there, did great trade deals virtually. We had a really interesting setup. We had 13 companies with us. They had virtual booths where people could come and go. So we've got a structure that we built for that. We'd be more than pleased to have that as a dual purpose where we could talk to our potential exporters, like whether it's our maple syrup or not. I'm half kidding when it comes to that. But we've got a tremendous amount of made in Ontario products that are perfect for Maryland. And you have a tremendous amount of products that would be perfect for Ontario. I would really like to pursue that. And I hope my staff.
Well, Minister Fedeli, I already have my team who's listening in, sending me instant messages with exclamation points saying, we love it, let's do it, let's do it. So I think I can give you an instant yes. Let's do that. That's perfect.
Well, and if I could just jump in, what a brilliant idea this is. And also you've got to be able to get the Maryland crabs to Ontario to make those crab cakes. And how do you do that? And that's with a company like UPS. So you've got to have the UPS is on the line. They're on our board. They have specialized, they perfected a specialized way to get Nova Scotia lobster. Yes. All over the world. We know they're getting the vaccines that are being developed, they're partnering, they and their colleagues are partnering. So I think this is an amazing idea. So it's not just the products, but it's also how you get them back and forth. And of course, we're also, going to have to talk about when it's safe to do so in a risk-based approach, how to reopen the border so that people can go back and forth as well.
In the meantime, I think, Secretary Schultz, we should do a test run of those crabs to my office through UPS. They do deliver to my home. I have the sticker on my door. I think
we will certainly follow up.
Very, very important test run of those beautiful crabs.
Wonderful. We have another question from our audience. This takes us in a slightly different direction. Pierre Pune from Bombardier notes that Bombardier has been a great partner with the state of Maryland and the Maryland Transit Administration, supplying multi-level trains for the Maryland area regional commuter trains, the MARC trains, which I get to try, and you probably do too from Frederick, Secretary Schultz. His question is, particularly interested in the infrastructure element of this new agreement. Are there government procurement pieces for infrastructure that are anticipated to be part of this new partnership?
And we've only got 4 minutes left.
Oh yeah, thank you, Scotty.
Okay, so I will be very fast and I'll just be very general. In the agreement itself, if anybody wants to read it, there is obviously a huge emphasis on the procurement process between Maryland and Ontario. we have agreed to form a procurement cooperation council. So that doesn't mean that we can, lift all of our transparency and all of the regulatory aspects of our procurement process in Maryland, but we can look to see what we can do about easing the impacts. And I believe I believe it was Minister Fedeli who said we're here to, build opportunities, not barriers. And I think that is a major part of the governor's legacy moving forward for the next 2 years of his term, to be able to make sure that we have some of those infrastructure projects, some of the major ones around the state, that can be started and concluded.
Two things on that. So this, as Secretary Schultz said, this is a first of its kind ever procurement cooperation council, and that's really to bring some transparency and engagement on government purchasing. So I think that's going to be very, very important. But also, it's a real genuine opportunity now for us to, as you heard Governor Hogan mention earlier, to talk about the best practices for purchasing transportation infrastructure. Every state, every province does it differently. What have we done that's really worked out well, and what hasn't been so successful? So we can share that. That's another important component of it, Pierre.
Scotty, let me turn it to you.
Well, I want to say thank you. I want to say congratulations on behalf of all of us that have tuned in, and we really appreciate it. Earlier, Chris asked the question about cooperation with the federal governments, and I just want to commend both Maryland and Ontario for the nonpartisan approach to economic recovery. Yesterday it was announced that Governor Hogan is the co-chair of the No Labels campaign. He's fearless and such a terrific leader, and you can tell by Secretary Kelly Schultz how he surrounds himself with amazing people. Premier Ford, has, we say politics stops at the water's edge, and there actually is water, a lot of it between Canada and the United States. And I think that the nonpartisan way in which the Premier has approached the North American relationship has been phenomenal. So just congratulations on behalf of all of us. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Chris Sands and the fabulous team at the Woodrow Wilson Center. I want to thank our team at the Canadian American Business Council and the Minister and the Secretary. We look forward to helping you with this. We really look forward to regulatory conversations. That's something that we care a lot about. This procurement council is quite interesting, and so there's a lot of work to be done here, and we're very grateful to all of you. Thank you.
And I'm grateful to not only you, Scotty, but to Minister Fedeli, Secretary Schultz, to Premier Ford, to Governor Hogan for bringing this to us. For those of you who sent in questions that we didn't have time to ask, we'll be sharing them both with the Secretary and with Minister Fedeli so that they might get back to you. But I want to thank all of our viewers for participating in today's event. It was history in the making, and maybe the next virtual trade show will be even more history in the making. And well, it's a pretty exciting morning. Thanks to everyone involved, and have a very nice day.
Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.